Hi everyone, welcome back to Read Instead. I'm Jake, glad to have you here today. So, continuing on with my 5-star reads off of my Goodreads page, that brings us to today, The Eye of the Needle by Ken Follett, 1978 thriller. Great book. This book came out in 1978. A couple years later, I believe Donald Sutherland, who just recently passed away, starred in a movie called The Eye of the Needle based on this book. This book is a thriller. It's historical fiction, which is always fun to read. I always love historical fiction. One of these days I'll make a video on sort of my favorite genres and why I like them. I spoke briefly the last video I made, I believe, about fantasy and why I enjoy it, and then I talked about escapism and things like that. Historical fiction is really fun too. I read a lot of historical fiction. And I think the reason why it's fun is because for me, in my mind, it can sort of trick my mind into thinking that the story within the main story, or in other words, like the backdrop, right? So this is a story that takes place in World War II is the backdrop, right? For instance, Saving Private Ryan, the movie. That's a story that takes place about saving a soldier named Ryan, but the backdrop is World War II. So we know that World War II, obviously historically took place. We have plenty of record of that. And these stories that are made within these huge historical events, for me, it tricks my mind into thinking, oh, maybe it could have happened. Maybe it could have happened. We don't know for sure, but everything seems to make sense. Something like that could have happened. The movie Titanic, maybe the most popular movie of all time. I don't know. But, we know about the Titanic. We know about the sinking of the Titanic in the northern Atlantic Ocean in 1912. But could have this love story taken place between this poor American boy and this young, wealthy British aristocratic girl? I don't know, maybe. So that's why that's part of the reason why I like historical fiction, because at the end of reading a novel, a fictional novel that's in the genre of historical fiction, I always it stays with me in the sense like maybe that could have happened, maybe that did happen. We don't know. But having said that, let me talk about The Eye of the Needle. Okay, first of all, let's talk about the title, because you're probably wondering, what is The Eye of the Needle? That's an interesting title. It is. The Eye of the Needle is a code name for a double agent, a German double agent living in England, okay? Has blended in with the public seamlessly. This guy, and I'm just going to refer to him, he has a German name, but I'm just going to refer to him as the Eye of the Needle, so you guys get the point. He is like, if I can liken him to, again, I use a lot of cinema references because I feel like most of us have seen these movies, and it's easy, it gives us a reference, right? So the Eye of the Needle is like Jason Bourne times 7. He is Jason Bourne on steroids, if you've ever seen any of those movies. This book is about espionage. It's about spies and the little intricacies of intelligence and trying to be one step ahead of your enemy during a time of war. For me, the cool thing is, right, like, I feel like once we got into the 30s and the 40s as a human race, right, when it came to first world countries like England and Germany and America, United States, places like that, espionage and the gathering of intelligence in regards to a war being fought really had reached some sort of a climax. It had reached the climax that could be reached without the technology that we have today. And in some ways, I know this might sound odd, but it was almost like the spies and the people who were involved in espionage back then were smarter than the ones that we have today, because the technology that we have today, everything is just done by computers, and I mean, for crying out loud, I've heard of, I'm no military expert by any means, by any stretch of the imagination, but I've seen things online of, these drones. America has these drones that they're in outer space. That's how high they are. And they can take pictures, they can with pinpoint accuracy and basically like read the writing on a piece of paper. It's like insane, the stuff that we have today. In 1940, they didn't have any of that stuff. A lot of the stuff, let alone how about cell phones? If a guy was a spy, if he was basically a military soldier, but he worked in that area of the military, he was a spy. I mean, he's dropped into enemy territory, and he didn't even have a cell phone. If he gets himself into some sort of trouble and he needs to get out quick, I mean, he had to rely on himself and only himself. And to me, that's just like, it makes it so much more intriguing and intense. When you read these books, and I feel like there are a lot of World War II espionage and spying and stuff like that, books about spies set during that time and that, with that setting, World War II, is done really well. And there's a reason why so many books, I think, are based on spies during World War II, because of some of those aspects I was just giving you. The Eye of the Needle, this German double agent, is in England trying to gather information for his German superiors. And the main information in that he's trying to gather is basically, after Germany during the time of World War II, when they would attack a country, they would then anticipate, the fight being brought to them. Just like when they attacked Pearl Harbor, they attacked America. They anticipated the United States landing on Normandy and storming the beach of Normandy. You guys all know about that. They anticipated that. Well, England got bombed too. Civilians, in and around London actually got bombed during World War II. So then Germany was anticipating that England would come to them. And surely they did. But they didn't know where England was going to land. They didn't know, you have England, and then you have the English Channel that separates Europe from, continental Europe from England. They didn't know where they were going to land. And what England would do is set up these basically fake military bases all along the coast. They would basically they would use boards and cars and little shacks and stuff like that, and they would just paint things, and they'd put like old planes that weren't even in use anymore, military planes, and they'd make a set, like almost like a set of a play. They'd make these military bases. So if a plane would go over, and they'd take these quick snapshots, and they wouldn't be high quality photos or anything like that. So basically, they could very easily trick another nation who's flying planes over trying to gather intelligence that this was a military base, and therefore we're probably going to attack. We're going to land on this part of your coast, or this part of the area in which you're defending. So I thought that was pretty cool. That's a real historical fact that England would make these makeshift fake military bases to throw people off. And that's why the Eye of the Needle, the German spy, is in England trying to gather this information. And he basically just lives as a hermit in England. He lives at he jumps from place to place, but when you first see him in the novel, he's just living in a boarding house, and people think he's like, what do they think he is? Maybe I don't know, he's like a traveling salesman or something like that. I don't quite recall but he would trick people, and nobody gave him, didn't pay any mind to him, because that's how good he was at being a spy. It was like, you'd look at him, but then you just look away. There was nothing intriguing about him. He didn't want to draw any attention to himself, and he does a very good job of that. But of course, once the British military and intelligence services realized who he is, then he's tailed. And he's, they begin to track him, and the way he throws them off is from chapter to chapter to chapter. It's basically like a chase. It's really, really fun to read. you have that's sort of one half of the story, or maybe more than half, is the story taking place around the Eye of the Needle and the intelligence and military operation. Then you have this this other large part of the novel of an English couple, a man and woman, and the husband, this he is, or rather was, a member of the Royal British Air Force, and he's always been a very patriotic man and very prideful and for England. And what happens is he gets hurt in an aviation accident and he becomes paralyzed. And so you have this whole story sort of within the story of this couple and how they're struggling to sort of stay in love because this man is so broken and hurt by his accident, and of course the war's taking place and he can't help anymore because he can't fly a plane anymore, and that's all he wanted to do. He comes from a family of military service and stuff like that, and so you have this whole sort of secondary story. But I will tell you that the story of the Eye of the Needle and that couple do converge at some point in this book, and that's when it starts to get really, really intense. I'm not going to get into how those two stories converge. I'll leave that to you to read it and check it out, but it is cool. I really love this book. Again, Ken Follett is one of my favorite authors. I've never read a book of his and didn't enjoy it immensely. Pick this up if it seems like something you guys would be interested in. Please give it a try. It's not a huge read. I believe it's 300 pages. But if anything that I talked about today, you feel like you'd be interested in, give it a shot. I think you'll like it. You guys take care. I'll see you again.